At 2:17 p.m., the ocean didn't explode. It spoke. No missiles, no gunfire, just steel slamming into steel on purpose. In the southern Caribbean, a U.S. Navy destroyer sliced through international waters. Holiday quiet, routine perfect. Then the first impact hit. Not an accident, not weather, a calculated strike. Seconds later, another, then another, then another. 4 Venezuelan warships, 1 American destroyer. 90 seconds that rewrote the definition of naval aggression. This wasn't war, and that's what made it dangerous. Every move was designed to stay just below the threshold that triggers retaliation. Close enough to intimidate, clean enough to deny. In naval warfare scenario analysis, this is the gray zone, where strategy replaces gunfire and mistakes echo globally. The crew felt the shocks ripple through the hull. Sensors lit up, alarms stayed silent. And in that moment, the U.S. commander realized something chilling. Respond wrong, and the story would be written for them. Here's the part most people miss. When the first collision hit, the destroyer didn't turn, didn't accelerate, didn't raise its guns. Because in modern naval warfare, motion is a message. Inside the hull, impact sensors recorded every vibration down to the millisecond. Not just damage, but intent, angle, speed, force. Each strike told a story, and that story was being logged in real time. The Venezuelan ship stayed close, too close, less than a nautical mile. A formation designed to crowd, intimidate, and provoke a reaction they could later frame as American aggression. And then radio silence. No warnings, no apologies, no explanations. 15 hails went unanswered. International channels, emergency channels. God frequency, nothing. Silence wasn't hesitation, it was doctrine. Because if you don't speak, nothing can be quoted. Nothing can be replayed. Nothing can be used against you. From the outside, it looked like restraint. From the inside, it felt like a trap tightening. The U.S. captain now faced 3 bad choices. And one option no Navy had ever used like this before. The 4th option wasn't about fighting the Venezuelan ships. It was about outlasting their narrative. While the ocean stayed quiet, the destroyer systems were screaming with data. Hull-mounted acoustic sensors, originally designed to hunt submarines, had captured every impact signature. Not just proof of contact, but proof of coordination. 4 separate acoustic fingerprints. 4 deliberate approaches. 1 synchronized plan. And that data didn't stay on board. Within minutes, encrypted satellite uplinks streamed everything to commanders thousands of miles away. In naval warfare scenario analysis, this is where power truly lives, not on the bridge, but in who's watching the bridge. Admirals weren't asking if this was intentional. They were watching it unfold live. Still, the destroyer didn't move. To the Venezuelan crews, that stillness looked like hesitation. Maybe fear, maybe confusion, maybe fear. Maybe confusion, and that miscalculation created an opening. Because documentation isn't passive. From hidden compartments, the ship released eyes, not missiles, not flares. Cameras, small deployable drones lifted into the air, compact, fast, nearly silent. Each carried ultra-high-resolution optics and a live satellite feed, angles no helicopter could risk. Close enough to read hull numbers, close enough to see faces, close enough to record who was at their stations and who wasn't. The Venezuelan ships didn't fire, they didn't even wave. But their deck crews were frozen in place, weapons covered, posture tense. Not relaxed, not routine, ready. One drone descended lower, 80 feet. So close its rotor wash rippled a Venezuelan flag. No warning, no announcement, just presence. The message was unmistakable. Everything you do from this second forward is permanent. Every frame streamed to command centers far beyond the horizon. Not just naval officers, but analysts, policymakers, intelligence desks, audiences the Venezuelan commanders couldn't see and couldn't escape. But cameras alone don't change behavior. A thin green line appeared on the bridge windows. Not a warning shot, not a spoken threat, a laser. Steady, precise, impossible to miss. In naval warfare scenario analysis, a targeting laser is psychological gravity, because everyone trained at sea knows what usually comes after the dot. The beam held on the first ship's bridge for 12 seconds, then shifted calmly to the second, then the third, Then the fourth. No shaking, no urgency, just control. The laser wasn't lethal, but the system behind it was. Observation could become engagement in seconds. On one bridge, officers ducked below the windows. On another, the helmsman stiffened. For the first time since the collisions, something changed. Speed. The lead ship slowed. 12 knots to 10, then 8. One by one, the others followed. Then came the sound before the sight. Rotor blades low, heavy, unmistakable. An MH-60R. Seahawk lifted from the destroyer's deck and took position overhead. In modern naval warfare, helicopters aren't just aircraft, they're multipliers. Radar tracked every ship at once. Infrared read engine heat like fingerprints. Optical systems isolated individual crew members on deck. The helicopter dropped lower. Rotor wash kicked up spray between hulls. It crossed each bow in a deliberate figure 8. A camera turret locked onto the lead ship's bridge. And that feed streamed live to Fleet Command, to defense centers, to analysts who would later dissect every hesitation. The Venezuelan commanders were no longer pressuring a ship. They were performing for an invisible global audience. The formation began to unravel. Not suddenly, not chaotically, precisely. Range opened, 0.8 of a mile, then 1, then more. Geometry told the truth before words ever could. One ship altered course just enough to break the box. Another throttled back. 2 widened spacing. This wasn't navigation. It was retreat without admitting it. No radio calls, no declarations. Just motion replacing silence. Through it all, the American destroyer never changed course, never accelerated, never pursued. The ship that had been struck 4 times refused to acknowledge it had been moved. At 2:41 p.m., analysts saw the wake patterns change. Tactical maneuvering flattened into transit profiles. By 2:47, the range stretched past 2 nautical miles. Still no shots fired. Still no threat spoken. Still no deviation. That was the final message. You can hit us. You can crowd us. But you cannot move us. The encounter ended without explosions, without headlines, yet it shook naval analysts worldwide. Because it proved something uncomfortable. In modern naval warfare, firepower isn't the first lever anymore. Documentation is. Restraint force something worse than retaliation, a permanent record. High-resolution visuals, sensor data, timelines that couldn't be denied. Venezuela had calculated impact without consequence. What they didn't calculate was exposure without escalation. The damage wasn't to steel, it was to credibility. So what decided this confrontation? Not missiles, not warnings, not force. Control of the story. The destroyer understood that firing first would erase context. Waiting would preserve it. Venezuela tested whether physical aggression could move an American warship. The answer came quietly. No, because when every action is recorded, restraint becomes power. And in a world where every confrontation goes global in minutes, the side that controls the narrative controls the outcome. When war doesn't start with gunfire, it's already begun.